of support and education. Sorry about that. I had to push the button to say it was okay to record. I have the pleasure today of introducing Darby Morhardt. The focus of Dr. Morhardt's work has been on the impact of cognitive impairment on the individual, family, and their social networks. Areas of clinical research include the experience of families living with Alzheimer's and non-Alzheimer's dementia, such as frontotemporal dementia and primary progressive aphasia, the process of tailoring care to specific needs and dementia symptoms, and the development and evaluation of quality of life enrichment programs, support groups, and other therapeutic interventions. Today, she will be presenting on coping with role changes in FTD. FTD alters personal dynamics. Spouses become primary caregivers. Adult children may provide care from afar. Understanding and adapting to these new roles can be disconcerting and extremely challenging. This session will help us the discrete stressors that come with role. It is to introduce Dr. Darby Morhardt. Thank you, Dr. Morhardt, for presenting for us.
Thank you so much, Esther. And I want to thank the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration for inviting me to join you today. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here. I am going to be talking about the coping, as Esther said, coping with role changes in FTD. So I'm going to start with this slide that is a brief review of what you all know already, that FTD is an umbrella term for three forms of FTD: the behavioral variant, the language variant, and the motor variant. These are not discrete terms, and we are learning more all of the time about these forms of FTD and how they progress, and how the symptoms may overlap over time, along with understanding the underlying neuropathology. So I realize too that this audience does not need to be reminded of the many challenges you are faced in caring with a person or for a person with FTD. We know that you are experiencing greater overall burden and stress and emotional challenges than those caring for persons with other forms of dementia. There are behavioral and personality and communication changes that result in the loss of your relationship, or at least the changing relationship with your person. You also tend to be younger. And being young and coupled with the fact that FTD is not associated with memory loss, at least in the beginning anyway, can lead to a delay, as we all know, in getting an accurate diagnosis. And that complicates your ability to plan and to seek help. And we also know that many of the support services have been designed for older adults living with Alzheimer's disease and not with persons who are younger and living with PPA or FTD. So for those in this meeting, I think this may look familiar to you, this whole challenging road to getting a diagnosis due to the gradual onset of symptoms and the difficulty explaining to others what's happening. There's a couple of articles here that I looked at, Rasmussen and Tukey's qualitative research, and they found that families experienced their person at the beginning becoming distant, increasingly silent or apathetic, and them feeling an emotional disconnection. And a couple of quotes here. We, as a family, were wondering about her, if there was really something wrong with her. She sometimes seemed disoriented. Her personality changed. She became so silent. It was so gradual. I mean, we're talking sort of over a year. If you're with him all the time, you wouldn't have noticed it, but it was so subtle and it wasn't too odd. And then feeling insecure about what you are seeing and not being taken very seriously. such as, so I talked to the doctor, I tried to explain the symptoms, and the doctor asked if we had problems in our marriage. I told him no and tried to explain a bit more, but I found it kind of embarrassing. I started to wonder if I was exaggerating. Another person said he was diagnosed with bipolar or hypomanic or something. See, I'd Googled, as you do, and I thought he'd got Pick's disease. And I told the doctor at the memory clinic, I think it's this. And they said it's not. He's passed his memory test. And another said, I felt like I was completely on my own in saying, it's not eccentricity. It's not him getting old. It's not stress. So before receiving the diagnosis, it was a constant battle and explaining for him what was going on.
Hello?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, hi, Joe. This is Susan.
Whoops.
Good.
I think we have someone who might need to mute. Okay, good. All right. Then there's getting the diagnosis that many caregivers report experiencing these mixed feelings of relief and fear about the future, feeling isolation, and not given a whole lot of support after receiving the diagnosis, such as when he got the diagnosis, I wasn't happy, but I was relieved that I knew that there was something wrong with him and it wasn't my imagination. It's not like cancer. He had cancer, and when he was diagnosed with that, he went in for a follow-up every 3 months. But with FTD, he's never seen anybody since. You're kind of left on your own. So now you have a name, you have FTD. You're figuring out what form it takes, the uncertainty of how it will progress, and you're coming to grips with the fact that life is not going to ever be the same. Your person is having difficulty with planning and organizing, no longer working, not able to take care of the kids. And it's especially impactful as you increasingly have more responsibility and you start to experience that loss of connection, losing a life partner or a parent or sibling or friend, and the future you had planned together. It is a struggle to change these roles and to figure out how to best communicate with your person, to understand what they can still do and where you need to assist. So you're actually living this paradox of living with someone who's physically present, but becoming more and more psychologically and emotionally absent. And how do you do that? One person said, if you think about it, you're managing somebody's life who's there with you, but you can't really have any discussion about it whatsoever. Because if you do, it's forgotten about in seconds, and he doesn't understand the implications. He doesn't have that emotional response, really. So it's important to recognize that FTD is a family diagnosis. It's not just given to one person. It's given to the spouse, the partner, the child, the extended family and friends, and it is life-changing. It means that roles will shift and change and evolve, and shift and change and evolve again and again over time. I want to share with you a family I got to know and who very generously allowed me to interview them each separately and then with a couple together. Peter is a 55-year-old psychologist who lives with his wife, Bonnie, a healthcare administrator. And Peter was diagnosed with FTD 3 years ago. And they moved from their home in Tennessee to Chicago to be near their children. And Bonnie says to me, yes, there are changes. I don't feel like a mom anymore. I've not been emotionally available, and that was a big part of being a mother for me. I have to ask them for help instead of they can always ask me for help. I don't like to be a burden, but I think I am. So here is the care partner of the person with FTD feeling like a burden to her children. Peter and Bonnie's daughter, Morgan, expressed the longing for emotional connection and the loss she's feeling for her mother, whose attention is now focused on her father, the person with FTD. And she's always been a bit closer to her mom. And she is in her late 20s with toddlers of her own and says, I miss my mom a lot. Yeah, I miss her. I have to come to terms with that, but I miss her. It's definitely a loss I can't talk to her about. She's taking care of dad and she used to take care of me. She is not there in the same way, and I don't expect her to be. Her partner is dying. She lost her home and quality of living. She doesn't need to hear how things have changed between us. She needs support and love, and she doesn't need to hear me say, why don't you pay attention to me anymore? And Bonnie says about the relationship with her husband, our relationship has changed. We were partners and we're not now. I miss him. He feels like my child. I check to see if he has on a clean shirt, to make sure he's got his hat, his pack, his shoes tied. I feel like his mom. What am I supposed to do with that? This slide is from an article by Sykes and Hall entitled, It Was Then That I Thought, What? This Is Not My Dad. That's the title of the article. And the subtitle is The Implications of the Still the Same Person narrative for children and young people who have a parent with dementia. So you probably hear all the time, they're still the same person. It's a very dominant public narrative for persons living with dementia. And some of you have seen the film Still Alice, where a linguistics professor is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It's the title of the book and a movie. In this study, though, they did a qualitative study of 18 individuals from 8 to 31 years of age and found that the person still being there, while it's an important, very important narrative to discuss, it doesn't tell the whole story for families. And the children in this article give voice to that experience. And here's a quote from Elizabeth, who's 28 years old. It's like there's two moms, and in your head, you never quite let go of. But you're constantly grieving for the old mom because she's sort of there, but not. It sounds awful, but people who have a parent who dies when they're in their teens or 20s, it's like quick. And it's awful, but then you're allowed to grieve. Whereas people don't see that with this. They just think, actually, you should be grateful that your mom is still here and she's not dead. And it's like, well, it's really not that simple. But I think I'm admitting that to anyone is really hard because people don't expect you to think that. So here I just want to turn to the key issues and concerns for children and teens. This slide contains images from the wonderful AFTD website for kids and teens. This site provides needed education and information on FTD presented in ways children and teens can digest. For example, how to talk to friends and others about the disease, being able to answer questions that's most comfortable for them, and so they can feel in a sense of control over how much to say, how to understand the behaviors they're seeing and how to respond in the most helpful way, how to communicate in the most helpful way. There's also genetic issues geared for children, especially older teens, where the family risk, if the family risk is evident, and how to handle a whole range of situations and symptoms that emerge over the course of the illness. There's also information on how to handle emotional concerns such as anxiety over the future of the parents' marriage, and worry that they may be responsible for the problems, and a lot of validation of the complex emotions that they're feeling, and perhaps embarrassment of their parents' behavior, and maybe not wanting their parent to come to games or school events and being unable to invite friends over. A whole sorts of things that kids and teens can relate to are there in this website. What I've been talking about so far is what has been called ambiguous loss. Pauline Boss coined the phrase. It's a type of loss you feel when a person is physically there, but may not be mentally or emotionally present in the same way as before. This is very different from when someone dies. You clearly know that the person is gone, and where you are more likely to get support from family and friends. And you may eventually find closure through a mourning ritual and the natural grieving process. This ambiguous loss complicates how you grieve. It may be hard for you to recognize this grief or know how to grieve when the person's abilities are changing. It confuses relationships and can prevent you from moving on. For example, you may feel as if you're no longer in a marital relationship. Recognizing these feelings and understanding the concept of ambiguous loss can help to ease the effects. With guidance and support, perhaps working through these feelings and beginning to grieve the losses and staying connected to the person with dementia may help, while also building your own strength and resilience for the road ahead. So coping with ambiguous loss is living with this paradox. It's the living with the ambiguity of, is my spouse or parent in the family or out of the family? Should I include them in this conversation I'm having about this huge life event, or should I not? So you are married and you're not married. Your parent will always be your parent, but you can feel like a daughter and a parent to them. You love them, but they may not know who you are. You want them to live as long as possible, yet wish for their pain and yours to end. That's living with that paradox. You're grieving the losses along the way. The losses are not only in your connection, but there's a lot of losses that you're experiencing from beginning to the end. So even the loss of a driver's license is a huge loss to grieve. The loss of being able to travel together, of your future plans, the need for outside help in the home, the need maybe to move to a long-term care home at some point. The loss is associated with deciding palliative care is the way to go. And then the dying process and death. And then after death, the adjustment to the loss of the caregiving role, the role that you've spent many years cultivating. So how to see these losses differently, how to live with the ambiguity. I've been talking about this a bit. It's learning to live with that paradox that someone we love can be both absent and present at the same time. And that, how do you live with that and perhaps live that each day? So instead of this either or, try to do this both and. I can take care of my person with FTD or myself. It's not an either or. You can take care of both yourself and your person with FTD. It's not, I'm either my person's spouse or their caregiver. You are both the spouse and you are the caregiver. You love your person exactly as they are now, or you miss how they used to be, and it's both. You love them as they are now and miss how they used to be. So what can ambiguity offer? I just wanted to introduce you, if you don't know this, Karen and Mondi Staub are two improvisational theater actors. And Karen's parents both have dementia. And they have been working, they've used their improvisational skills to communicate with Karen's parents. And they have a story on NPR in This American Life from 2014. It's called Magic Words, Step into Their World, the Parallel Universes of Alzheimer's and Improv. Yes, it's Alzheimer's, but I think it's very relevant here. It's just using this rule of thumb of being flexible, stepping into their world, always saying yes, always accepting what their reality and letting them just define themselves. So all of this that I've been talking about, this is easier said than done. And it's really important that you're tending to your own self-care. It can be rewarding to be a care partner and challenging, but taking care of yourself is going to help you take care of them. So prioritizing your physical, mental, and emotional health. I know I'm not the first person that's saying this. I like this slide that just, it reminds you to eat healthy, to get enough sleep, to go to the doctor for yourself, to find a support group, maybe hire that help, get some exercise, and make sure you're connecting with others. So we, offer online care partner support groups, and I just wanted to read a couple of quotes from one of our FTD care partner groups. Person said, "Bearing my soul in front of strangers felt right. It was absolutely incredible. All the other people in the support group were going through exactly the same emotions as I was, and I could see the grief in their faces, and it was just like me." And then in our PPA group, just the other day, actually, a care partner said, "I take so much away from each group. It really helps a lot. Little nuggets of things to do to carry me through the month. It's heartbreaking, but reassuring that we are not alone." Then I know that my talk here today was meant for care partners, but I also want to make sure that while we understand that there are losses, that we are not always looking through that lens. I think that is something all of us as clinicians and family members need to keep reminding ourselves, that there are many remaining strengths in many persons living with FTD for us to celebrate. We have some lovely paintings and art on the walls of our center and clinic. And here are some examples I wanted to share with you that some of our persons living with FTD have given us. A quilt, painting of a watercolor of red leaves, a photograph, and some glass blowing. So in conclusion, I want to share with you a quote again from Pauline Boss. So as you can see, FTD does not have to be terrifying, but everyone needs to acknowledge the stress of despair and emotions it causes. And to manage, begin learning to think in a new way, to hold two opposing ideas at the same time, the absence and the presence, sorrow and joy, anger and hope. All are realities when FTD is involved. Instead of being frustrated or afraid or fighting against the confusion, try to embrace the ambiguity and continue to care even when your loved one no longer knows who you are or knows that you are caring for them. And paradoxically, this loss can help you know who you are. So continuing to participate in this less than perfect relationship requires courage and empathy. It deepens your humanity. And this can be your source of new hope. I just want to acknowledge my mentors and my team, Dr. Marcel Mesulum, Sandy Weintraub, Emily Rogalski, my social work team, Debbie Dislin, Kate Maley, and Lauren Dowden, the AFTD, and all persons living with many forms of FTD and their families who've taught me so much over the past 28 years that I've been doing this work. And I'm constantly learning from you. I also have my contact information here. And I thank you very much.
Dr. Morhardt, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. You are an expert in supporting families with FTD and through this journey, and we are so thankful to even have you here to present today and to be able to share with us some of the tools and guidance that you can provide to people. Excuse me. Somebody said, they find themselves really frustrated with their dad a lot of the time, and they're struggling with how to explain their behaviors to friends without taking away their loved one's autonomy. Do you have any guidance or any thoughts on how somebody might be able to handle some of those emotions and navigate some of those feelings?
Yeah, could you repeat the question? I got a little distracted by the chat, so I'm sorry.
No problem. So somebody was asking, they're very frustrated with their dad a lot of the time.
Sure.
And they're wondering how folks cope with that, and especially how they can explain some of his behaviors to friends who meet him while respecting his autonomy.
Oh, respecting his autonomy, maybe meaning respecting his privacy, because it's not really betraying his autonomy. It's just helping your friend, really understand the best way of responding to the various behaviors that they're seeing. So, I think, it's really getting comfortable yourself as the child, being able to disclose this diagnosis to people in your life who are important to you and who, you want to maintain and continue to have a relationship with. There's no really any other way of explaining this other than saying my dad has a problem with he's having some brain changes that are causing him to act in this way. And he can't help it. And it's something that I've been grappling with myself and learning to live with. And I just hope that, you want to make sure that this person isn't offended or hurt by the father's responses or reactions. I hope that's helpful. I think there's a lot of nuances with these questions, a lot of questions I would want to ask the questioner.
She said, thank you. It was very helpful.
Okay, great.
And I think that those emotions, as you can tell in the chat, many people are all responding that frustration is a very common thread that occurs. Yeah. And really, I think taking a step back and taking time for yourself where you can, that's where that self-care really comes into play, because the person with FTD can't control their behavior. No. And learning how to adapt to that, and then learning how to care for yourself so you can walk with them through that journey is just, so important. So, thank you for sharing your personal story out there, Blair. I think everyone really appreciated you acknowledging what they're all feeling in this situation right now. And it's very common. I will also say that some of you are talking about AFTD awareness cards. AFTD does have awareness cards. They're on our website. I will try to put a link in the chat if I can real quick. But if not, you can find them on our website, or you can call the helpline. And we have them for PPA and we have them for FTD. AFTD also has a letter that you can provide to friends and family, and many people have written the letter, taken the letter, and sent it out via email or some other form of communication to let people know what's going on and why their loved one might be behaving differently, or your communication may be different. But it's always important too to respect the person involved. And sometimes part of respecting them is taking away some of the stigma of the diagnosis, and allowing people to love them and walk with them through the process. So that's so important. Somebody said, the financial planners tell me that I can afford to hire help in the home for my husband with FTD. At this point, he's okay, and I have a little bit of help. Why am I having trouble hiring someone just so that I can have me time? And I think that's a really common question too, Darby. I think this is a hard one to answer, but I think that this happens a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much a part of, your relationship. You should be always feeling like I should be able to do this. I'm his wife, I'm his partner. This is my role. And I think that, a lot of everyone struggles with balancing and juggling, their me time with time for others. And so, really thinking about where that might come from yourself and your own history and your own relationship, previous relationships, I think, and recognizing that as your partner becomes, as the disease progresses, there's going to be increasing dependence on someone. It doesn't always need to be you, because there's always going to be this need to balance your needs with his needs. I don't know if I'm answering that. It is a tough question, and it's one that I think takes some self-reflection on the part of the care partner on what's getting in the way of being able to reach out and get the help you need, or that's gonna take you down this path, because it's a long haul for a lot of people. So pacing yourself is really important.
Yeah, there's that saying that you can't pour from a cup that's empty.
There you go.
So it's so important.
You all have the answers. So I don't have to sit here and talk about the answers. You all have them yourselves.
But it's true. You can't pour from a cup that's empty, and you have to be able to refill your cup and care for yourself so that you can care for your loved one. And very often being a good caregiver is taking time for yourself so that you can be a good caregiver. And I know all too often there's this guilt around taking time for yourself, because you feel like you're not, being there for the person that you want to support and that you love. But if you're going to be a better caregiver, if you can go out for a massage or walk with your friend, or, take time for yourself, then really you're doing better by the person that you love, because you're filling your cup so you can pour into them. And that's okay. And you should feel released to be able to do that if you need that. Somebody with FTD, Darby, said that they're really struggling with trying to get their family to understand what they're going through. Do you have any recommendations for somebody with FTD to help, with their family?
Thank you for sharing that. We don't hear enough, or maybe I don't hear enough from you, the person living with FTD, on what you're going through. So I would have lots of questions about what have you already tried in terms of trying to explain to them what's happening. And also, have you provided some of these wonderful resources through the AFTD that can help? Are they here today? Did they go? I didn't see the panel, but I heard about the panel this morning. Persons that were from the panel of persons living with FTD. Maybe getting that video, recorded video, and showing them that might be helpful. But don't give up. This might be hard for them to wrap their head around this. There may be a lot that you're doing that looks the same to them, so they don't really quite get what's different. Families really struggle with this. I think, as I was saying in the earlier part of the illness, things are so gradual and subtle that people don't always trust what they're seeing either. No, Esther, you've been really great here. If you have anything to add, please feel free.
No, I really echo what Dr. Morhardt is saying. I think education is the key to helping people understand what you're going through and what you're experiencing. We have a couple videos on our YouTube page of people living with FTD and their own personal experience. And sometimes other people can put into words better than you can what it is you're feeling. So if something echoes with you that you've heard somebody living with FTD say, feel free to share that with them to better help them understand what it is that's going on with you and what you're experiencing. The more we educate, the more we can help change the way that people living with FTD are, stigmatized and viewed, and help change the way that their life goes, because we're going to view it differently. So we're going to have more grace and empathy and compassion, as the council this morning talked so much about. So, I think thank you for asking the question, because it's a hard question to ask and to even be involved in. And so many of you, I see you in the chat commenting back and forth and supporting each other. And so I just want to echo the importance of support and why that is so important, to talk to other people who understand where you are. AFTD has many different types of support groups. We have some personal support groups, we have some community support groups, we have virtual support groups, we have national groups. We have ones for persons diagnosed, those with PPA, those with behavioral variant with extreme behaviors, those with FTD ALS. So there's definitely people that you can connect with and talk to who understand your journey and where you're at and can help you kind of walk through the experience and what you're seeing. So often people are afraid to go to support group, but I hear all too often people telling me the benefit of that, as Dr. Morhardt spoke during her presentation. People are giving some clues and things that they've done to help get a break. So, if there's anything else that you guys have thought of that has given you a break or has been a relief for you or that has helped you be a better caregiver, feel free to put that in the chat, because, you guys are you're the expert caregivers.
Yeah, and
yes,
go ahead, Esther.
No, you go ahead. I was just talking, you're good.
No, I was just, and when you were talking about the awareness cards, I was thinking of a family who left our clinic or research center and went out for dinner. And they had just gotten some of those cards, and the person, they were at dinner, and the server was quite rude because they didn't really understand some of the behaviors of the person. I don't remember all the details. They showed them that card and they immediately changed their demeanor and were very helpful and apologetic to the family.
Has anybody else had any experiences with the cards? I know that I see some familiar faces in here of support group leaders. So I'm sure that you guys have heard of some, other times that the cards have been really beneficial and a huge asset. And somebody else put in here to go to the AFTD website, which is true. There's many, many resources to support you on the AFTD website. Are there any other questions or anything else anybody would like to ask Dr. Morhardt? No, we're good. All right, well then I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much, Dr. Morhardt, for your time today and for coming and speaking with us and sharing. This has been a great time. I'm a huge fan of Pauline Boss too. Most likely a little bit of an after effect of you, Dr. Morhardt, on us here at AFTD. But her books are wonderful and they really do help understand the journey and the grief that people are going through. So please check them out. She's got a couple of really wonderful books and they are also listed on the AFTD resource page. So please feel free to go there and access those resources. Have a great day, everyone.
All best to you.